All right, Owls. This is our first official set of notes that will kick off our virtual learning here on April 13th for the quarantine period for Corona. We're going to start with the standard 6L2.1. In general, it's food chains, food webs, and ecosystems. And in your Google Classroom, in this assignment, I let a link to the notes that look like this. You can either fill this out virtual or electronically, or you can just simply write the notes on a piece of paper. It's whatever works best for you. You do not have to turn this in. This set of notes will be used to help you with assignments this week and going into next week. So let's get started. In this table, I'm going to go through each table. You're going to fill the information out in the box to your right, or if you're doing it on a piece of paper, just write the information next to the word. First, we're going to start with matter, going back to where we started in science this year. We're going to talk about how matter is transferred in an ecosystem, and it's transferred in two ways. The first way is it's transferred from one organism to another, and that's essentially eating something. A plant eating or getting eaten by an animal getting eaten by another animal, an animal dying and decomposing, getting decomposed by bacteria, or a tree dying and getting decomposed by bacteria. Also, it can be transferred between an organism and their environment. It could be transferred from a piece of wood being broken down into nutrients back into the soil. That's just one good example, but these are the two ways in general that matter is transferred throughout an ecosystem. Next, we're going to talk about water, nitrogen, carbon dioxide, and oxygen. Last year, you learned a lot about the water cycle. If you looked at the notes before this slide about cellular respiration and photosynthesis, you can talk about carbon dioxide and oxygen. What you need to know essentially, though, is that they are all cycled between living and non-living things. Like I just told you about the water cycle, there's also the carbon cycle. You'll hear a lot about your carbon footprint and stuff like that because carbon is recycled through living and non-living things. So you just need to know in general. You do not need to know the stages of each of these cycles or the elements of them. Like last year, you needed to know all the different stages of the water cycle. That is not what sixth grade is all about. You just need to know that these various things are cycled. Moving into food, also known as glucose. Glucose is a simple sugar that is made in photosynthesis. For all living things, it does two things. First, it provides building materials. Building materials is how you grow, or how a plant grows, and how you move, and also provides fuel. Fuel is also known as energy, and that energy is found in this process of cellular respiration. So if you did the assignment that was optional before this assignment, cellular respiration talks about how food is broken down into energy, also known as ATP. That is what animals are looking for, or what you are looking for when you eat your food. Let's go into energy. Keep in mind that energy flows in an ecosystem in one direction. Unfortunately, it shares the name with a really bad band, but it does. It always goes in one direction, and the direction will follow the order of a food chain from the sun to producers to consumers to decomposers. Now, before, when you learn about the food chains, you probably learned about primary consumers and secondary consumers and tertiary consumers. In general, you just need to know it goes from producer, consumer, decomposer, all starting from the sun. So let's move into what that sun, or the sunlight for that example, and what it does. Well, sunlight provides energy for plants to make glucose. As previously mentioned, if you did the optional assignment before this assignment, we talked about photosynthesis. This is how plants take in sunlight, mix it with water and carbon dioxide, and they make glucose. And that glucose is why the producers are the starters of all food chains, is because they make the food to start it. Food chain and food web, very similar, but there is one distinct difference. A food chain is just one complete cycle, an individual cycle from producer to decomposer. For example, grass goes to a cow, the cow gets eaten by a wolf, and then the wolf gets broken down by maggots. That's one food chain. However, a food web is all the food chains within an area or ecosystem. It's a web of chains and connections. Hence, is why it's called a food web. It's interconnected because if you think about your backyard, there's not just one thing that eats the grass in the backyard, and each of those things will go off and get eaten by something else. So all these interconnected chains make a web. Let's go to each part. Let's start with green plants. Green plants are producers of food that are used directly, meaning someone eats a vegetable like you do for dinner, or indirectly, like a lion eats a antelope, by all consumers, because when the lion eats an antelope, it's looking for what the antelope ate before it, which was most likely a plant. So producers are green plants. They start it, and then all consumers need green plants to survive. So the consumers are dependent on green plants. Green plants are known as producers. They obtain energy directly from the sun via photosynthesis. They produce their own food. This is why they're called producers. It just didn't because scientists didn't have a better name for them. It's because they actually produce, and produce means to make your own food. Let's talk about what we all are, and that's consumers. Consumers are living things that need to consume glucose from other sources to survive, meaning they have to consume food. Consume means to take in, because we cannot make our own. You think about consumers are also known as like people who shop, and it's because you're going out to get something. Same thing here is you have to eat to get something, and what you're looking for when you eat something is glucose. There's a reason why your parents tell you to eat your vegetables, because they're full of glucose and it's good for your body. Keep in mind that scavengers, you probably learned about them last year, which eat dead things. Let's be thankful for scavengers like turkey vultures. All scavengers are also consumers. They're not a separate thing on a category, meaning scavengers aren't their own piece of this. So scavengers are just simply a consumer. The only way that they're different from consumers is they don't hunt their own food, they just eat dead things. Decomposers, the final step, or if you really want to look at it, it could be the first step of a food chain. And what these things do, they decompose dead organisms and return nutrients to the environment. So if you think about soil, one of the elements of soil is nutrients. One of the ways they get there is from decomposers. Decomposers not only break down dead animals, but also dead plants. More commonly is dead plants than animals. And those nutrients are used in future plants to be grown from to make new food for other things, and this cycle starts over. So if you think about how we cycled things over and over again, matter could be also one of those things that are cycled because of this. You see how food is cycled through each of the animals in a food chain. All right, that's the end of the flip notes. From here, I want you to go on to the handout that says video resources for 6L2.1. I left 3 brain pop videos. They're pretty quick videos. And then I listed a 15-minute YouTube clip. Really good video. Take the time to watch that. It will actually help you learn a little bit deeper about each of the things I talked about. And then from there, you'll have a quick check-in Google form quiz. And that will be the final part of lesson 1 for week 1 of virtual learning here in science on 6.4 on the Owls. Take care. I have office hours from 2 to 3. You can email me or leave me a message in Google Classroom, and I will get back to you promptly during that time.